Good morning, everyone. I am Joylette Portlock. I'm the Executive Director of Sustainable Pittsburgh. And with me today, also from Sustainable Pittsburgh, is Gina Johnson, our Director of Programs. We are excited to also be here with CEOs for Sustainability co-chairs, Charles Turan and Raymond Yeager, to lead us through our session this morning. As CEOs for Sustainability leaders, share their commitment to sustainability as a driver of innovation and a thriving, equitable economy. Just a quick note that this session is being recorded today. So for those who aren't familiar, CEOs for Sustainability is an outcomes-based network of invited C-suite leaders of well-aligned companies to share best practices and collaborate in growing the ranks of those that enjoy the benefits of sustainable practices. CEOs for Sustainability is led by the executives of companies representing more than $150 billion in total revenues and 100,000 employees. It is hosted by the nonprofit Sustainable Pittsburgh. And we believe this is the only group in the nation where CEOs provide this kind of regional thought leadership around business sustainability. This morning, we are pleased to have an outstanding agenda showcasing companies that are leading the way to a strong economy that can benefit all of our people. And I'm going to turn it over now to Gina to give us an overview of today's session.
Thanks, Joylette, and welcome everyone. We are excited to have a great lineup today. As Joylette mentioned this morning, we're excited to hear from Charles and Ray, building on the CEOs for Sustainability priorities to drive business innovation and support a thriving economy. Our keynote follows, and we're pleased to have Beth Jenkins of Upmc Health Plan to introduce her conversation with this morning's keynote speaker, Lisa Conway, the Vice President of Sustainability Americas at Interface Inc. You may know Interface Inc. as a provider of carpet tiles. For sustainability professionals, Interface is widely admired for the transformation its founder, Ray Anderson, initiated 25 years ago when he had an epiphany that the company needed to go from being among the dirtiest types of manufacture to perhaps the world's most sustainable. And then after that, next, Joylette will moderate an exceptional panel of CEOs who will share how sustainability drives competitive advantage at their businesses, followed by we're going to try something fun. Several sustainability experts among the CEOs for Sustainability leadership have agreed to answer some questions and engage in some fun conversation with attendees about making progress on CEOs leading forward priorities. So please do stick around for that. We think it'll be fun and interactive. We're planning lots of opportunity to ask questions and connect with others throughout this program. So please do share questions and feedback throughout. And finally, for those who are registered in advance, we look forward to being in person with you at 3 Crossings, the dynamic mixed-use development in the Strip District. And we want to thank our host, Oxford Development, and CEO Steve Guy, a longtime leader in CEOs for Sustainability, for hosting that. Now, before we get started, before we go a little bit further, let's take just a minute to get a sense of who's with us today. That we're going to use this fun and easy tool throughout the program today. So please do join us, very easy to use. Go to menti.com. That should be showing up here. Why it's not showing on the screen. And in chat, Jeanette is going to put the URL that you can use to get to Menti. It should be appearing on the screen here. I'll troubleshoot. But just go to menti.com, enter the code, or I'm sorry, now you're going to use the link that Jeanette is providing in the chat, and start to put in your sector. It'll pop up here. And if you're more comfortable, you can use Menti on smartphone. Just be sure that when we look at the keynote, you're looking at the screen here. So nice. We've got, oh boy, already a really nice, vast diversity of types of organizations represented here today, from manufacturing to water, nonprofits, education, and local governments. This is great. So thank you very much for letting us know that you're here. Nice, very good. And now with that, handing it back to Joylette. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks very much. Yes, and thanks everyone for sharing a little bit about who you are behind the webinar screen with us today. A lot of good representation from diverse sectors, strong representation I saw from manufacturing, as well as education and sustainable development. So thank you all for that. Advancing the CEOs for Sustainability leading forward priorities really is a collaborative effort. And so I want to take a moment to especially thank UPMC Health Plan, the CEOs for Sustainability Platinum sponsor, for helping to make this exciting initiative possible. Also want to give thanks to Covestro LLC, a gold sponsor and founding participant in CEOs for Sustainability. And our thanks to our nonprofit educational and government partners on the CEOs for Sustainability Advisory Committee for lending their expertise and guidance. And with that, I'd like to kick off this event, or hand it off to our CEOs for Sustainability co-chairs to kick off this event. Pleased to introduce the co-chairs Raymond Yeager, President and CEO of DMI Companies, and Charles Turan, President of SciTech Consultants. Charles, why don't you take it away?
Thanks, Joylette. Last year, when we hosted the C-Suite Summit, we were deep into the pandemic, with too many people mourning loved ones. Millions struggled to pay their bills, while thousands of businesses were fighting to keep their doors open. Through it all, we have seen minority communities and minority-owned businesses hit the hardest. But we also saw resilience and business continuity. We saw companies that had worked to reduce their exposure to operational risk. They prioritized high performance in environmental, social, and governance indicators. They sought out suppliers that do the same and cultivated flexible work plans and diverse perspectives. In this, CEOs for Sustainability saw an opportunity to lay the groundwork for recovery in our businesses and our region. And 1 year ago at this summit, we introduced a set of bold priorities for leading forward on a sustainable economic recovery. Ray?
These leading forward business priorities are vital to supporting a recovery that works for all of us. There are three main areas: supporting local communities and businesses through the immediate economic crisis that we are in at this point, advancing racial and ethnic equity through our own business operations, and reducing our company's carbon footprint. It's been roughly 1 year since calling on our C-suite peers to join us in adopting these priorities. What we found is these priorities are more urgent and timely than ever. Local businesses continue to struggle to get back to full profitability. Our region continues to grapple with racial inequity. Employers of all types struggle to attract and retain top talent, including women and minorities. And even as the world leaders meet today at the COP26 area to advance climate action, we know our employees, customers, and investors are looking for us to develop solutions and be leaders. These are challenging goals. They require a long-term commitment. However, we believe they are essential if we're to realize the kind of future we want for our people and our region. CEOs for Sustainability companies are demonstrating the benefits of these leading forward priorities through such efforts as prioritizing local suppliers where possible. We see such benefits as those shown here that positively impact our region's economy. The benefits of advancing workplace racial and ethnic equity are well established. Steps like advancing equity in hiring, developing and promoting diverse talent, and prioritizing supply chain diversity can improve profitability. A recent McKinsey report found that companies in the top quartile of racial and ethnic diversity are 35% more likely to have financial returns above their industry medians. And when it comes to reducing carbon emissions, businesses are finding operational supply chain efficiencies, as well as opportunities for innovation in their products and services. This is an opportunity for Southwestern Pennsylvania. We see this in innovation hubs emerging around sectors like advanced manufacturing and robotics, vehicle automation and electrification, and additive manufacturing. It means new business models, new well-paying jobs, and new firms seeking to do business here. Charles?
Businesses, including our own, are doubling down on these leading forward priorities. Many of the CEOs for sustainability leaders are with us today, and we'd like to recognize them. Leroy Ball, Coppers.
Jan Brynmeyer, Architectural Innovations.
Michael Sherrock, AE Works.
Lalit Cordia, Thar Process.
Troy Giannopoulos, the Efficiency Network.
Stephen Guy, Oxford.
Hawkin Janssen, Covestro.
Ron Keating, Evaqua Water Technologies.
Yana Lake, 3R Sustainability.
David Landis, Epic Metals.
Kurt Lester IV, Kurt J. Lester Company.
Sean McLean, Montauk Renewables.
Robert Nutting, the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Mashiro Agiso, Oregon.
Albrecht Powell, Accenture.
Jack Scallo, Burns and Scallo Roofing and Scallo Solar Solutions.
Andrew Schwartz, Environmental Planning and Design.
Scott Toby, Signature Financial Planning.
And our research liaisons, Catherine Augustine from RAND and Debbie DeLong from Chatham University. Each of the CEOs for sustainability leaders are deeply committed to strategic sustainability for their bottom lines, their people, and the quality of life in our communities. As leaders who understand the business advantages of sustainability, CEOs for Sustainability is inviting the region's businesses to reap the same benefits our companies have experienced. In making our businesses more innovative and resilient, we will help our people and economy thrive too.
You don't have to go it alone. Our companies and others, like Interface Inc., offer examples of how to incorporate sustainability into your business strategy. Sustainable Pittsburgh and our other partners also stand ready to help equip your company for progress. We invite you to hear more from the leaders on our agenda today and visit ceosforsustainability.org to learn more.
Now it is my pleasure to introduce one of these exemplary leaders. Mary Beth Jenkins is Senior Vice President and Chief Administrative and Operating Officer at UPMC Health Plan, the region's largest employer. Through its commitment to healthy people and communities, UPMC has made this region a better place to live and work. Mary Beth.
Thank you, Charles and Ray. It is my pleasure to join this impressive group this morning. Collectively, we can make a difference to advance the important topic of sustainability. Like all of you, UPMC is committed to our thriving region and to helping drive forward the priorities of CEOs for sustainability. Recently, I was afforded the opportunity to learn more about an innovative and trailblazing company. The company is Interface, and they are located in Atlanta. They were the first company to sell all carbon neutral products. I had the privilege of speaking with Lisa Conway, the Vice President of Sustainability Americas at Interface. And let me tell you, she is inspiring. I am pleased to now share my conversation with Lisa Conway, today's keynote. I hope you will be as inspired as I am by her expertise and Interface's leadership in sustainability. Enjoy.
Welcome. I'm Mary Beth Jenkins. I am the Senior Vice President and Chief Operating and Administrative Officer for UPMC Health Plan. UPMC Health Plan and CEOs for Sustainability are excited to have an outstanding corporate leader sharing her global perspective on business sustainability with us today. Lisa Conway serves as VP of Sustainability, Americas for Interface, the first global flooring company to sell all carbon neutral products. She and her team are responsible for regional activation of the company's mission, Climate Take Back. To drive understanding of the impact of carbon on human health, Lisa and her team provide educational programming around the need for transparency about embodied carbon in building specifications. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you. Thrilled to be here.
So, Lisa, I was interested to read about your bio, about your passion for making people aware of interconnectedness of environmental sustainability and human health. You know, something that I'm also very passionate about at UPMC Health Plan. But can you share a little bit about yourself outside of work?
Absolutely. So I am actually also located in Pennsylvania, the other side of the state. So we won't talk about sports, but I live in Philly. I actually grew up here my whole life, went to Drexel for interior design. And I live in the city with my husband of more than 14 years and a 7 and 9-year-old and our pandemic puppy, our golden doodle, he's over a year now, and we are now officially committed to actually training him.
Oh, well, that's great. It's wonderful to hear that you're in Philadelphia, the other side of the state. You know, I too have 2 dogs, but not COVID dogs, right? But I managed to not kill them during COVID when I worked remote. You know, COVID is really, I don't know about you, but boy, it's testing, you know, our everything, right? You know, our health and our social and economic systems in extreme ways. So when I think about the work of sustainability, now more than ever, it's so incredibly important. So to hear from someone like you, who's such an expert, your company that's passionate for it, you know, boy, we are really lucky to have this conversation with you. So, you know, I've rambled on long enough. So I want to talk more about interface. Okay.
Yeah.
So, you know, I shared a little bit that interface is known for being perhaps the most sustainable industrial company in the world. Like, that's crazy, right? It's the first global flooring manufacturer to make all of its products carbon neutral. You know, really an astounding achievement for a product that's typically made from petroleum-based materials. But I understand from you that sustainability was not always a focus at Interface. Talk a little bit about the transformation and how you've gotten here today.
Sure, absolutely. So Interface was the company to bring carpet tile, which is carpet in modules, over to the US. And that was over 40 years ago. And when we first started our business, our founder, Ray Anderson, you know, he really never thought about where our product supply chain really came from. Just wanted to make sure that we certainly had enough of it to fulfill orders. And it wasn't until some of our customers actually were asking us, what is Interface doing for the environment? And Ray was very uncomfortable not having an answer for that other than we're not breaking any laws. So not exactly the most bold environmental mission. And he took it upon himself to really do a bit of research into why were people asking this, you know, what was the concern? And a book landed on his desk called The Ecology of Commerce by Paul Hawkin. And that's where he really convicted himself a plunderer. Our product was, in fact, our products even now were almost entirely oil derived, petroleum based, you know, fossil fuel based supply chain. And he was a super competitive guy. And that's when he really took it upon himself to set a really bold mission for Interface, which was called Mission Zero, set back in 1994, which was our promise to eliminate any negative impact our company had on the environment by the year 2020. And we wanted to really show the industrial world that if a company like ours that made a product like ours could do this, then anyone could. So I'm just fortunate, honestly, to be here. I've been here for 14 years, didn't know anything about sustainability or the environment before getting here until reading his book, which is where I really had that kind of transformational moment and realized that I really wanted to be an interfacer for life.
Wow, that's a remarkable story. And really to hear about the company's progression to really how you're now this great leader, for a world leader for sustainability. Yep. But I think even more recently, to hear about what Interface is doing related to, for another goal, right? I think it's the moonshot goal, working to reverse global warming. How does one company, take on such an astounding challenge? How are you thinking about that? Share a little bit about that goal.
Yeah, so it's actually kind of a cool story, because when Ray set Mission Zero back in 1994, that sounded impossible to people. People had no idea what he was talking about. Several people will tell the story now. We just figured that he had like gone crazy and we could just wait it out and this too shall pass, and then it really became part of who we were. So as we started to approach 2020 and declare success on that mission, which was very interface centric, it was about interface getting to zero. When we kind of surveyed our associates, we asked them, what should our next mission look like? And the feedback that we got back was it should sound impossible, which is really interesting because a lot of corporations don't want to set a goal that they don't already know they can achieve. At Interface, we're a bit different. Like if it doesn't sound impossible, it's not even worth working on. So back in 2016, we started doing the work with Paul Hawkin, Janine Benyes, if you know her name, from biomimicry. And what we really wanted to do is, we're not a huge company, so we're a lot smaller than even UPMC. We're only 3,800 associates globally. But we really wanted to see, number one, what is Interface uniquely positioned to provide? What do we have experience doing? And number two, what does the world need most now? And that's where we have a lot of experience lowering our carbon emissions, both operationally and in our supply chain. And what does the world need most now? Climate change is the greatest threat to human health of the 21st century. There isn't a vaccine for it. So we really kind of merge those two things. And the interesting thing about Climate Takeback, which is just our name for reversing global warming, is that it is not just about interface. We need, and part of my team's job is to activate that mission even outside of interface. So to all of the CEOs and C-suite listeners right now, we need to partner with all of you to scale this bold idea and actually reverse global warming, not just mitigate climate change, but have our sights set on something beyond, a 10% year-over-year reduction. We need to really base it on science and getting to that 1.5 degrees, which puts a lot of us out of our comfort zone. We're still not sure how we're going to get there. But we've set some science-based targets. We've now created a product that actually stores more carbon than it emits to make it, and that's without offsets. So I think really when we set our mind around something that sounds impossible, innovation really steps up to the plate, because now you're not thinking about those incremental reductions. You're thinking about like, well, whoa, like we have to think way beyond, a 10%. So.
Oh, well, that's, you describe your company as small, but, small, mighty, right? So the thinking of your CEO and your team is just incredible. And I too think that until we all come together, right, and lock arms and we collectively take on how we can, combat global warming and climate change. We're just, it's going to be too hard, impossible. So I think your approach is just dynamic, but there are these, everything you're talking about is incredible. But what have been your overcoming challenges, right? Like it's not easy. So talk a little bit and share with this group how you really what you faced and how you've overcome some challenges along the way.
Sure. So I think maybe one of the most interesting challenges is meeting people where they are in how they think about climate change. Catherine Hayhoe is an amazing scientist out of Texas Tech, and she's chief scientist at the Nature Conservancy. And she actually has a book that has come out called Saving Us. And there's another great book by Catherine Wilkinson called All We Can Save. And both of those books do a really great job of recognizing that we have to meet people where they are on this conversation. Most people, the great majority of people, aside from, politics, trust the science that climate change is a huge concern. Over 70% of people. They just don't know what to do about it. It is a huge burden when you really start to understand the science and try to understand what role you have in it. We're in the building industry, so most people have a much larger impact that we work with in their jobs of specifying building materials than they do at home. So at home, you might be like, oh my gosh, I have to get rid of my car. I have to become vegan. I have to, like, all of these things that feel really personal to give up. And we try to make them realize, actually at work, you have a way larger impact because of the scale of all of your decisions. So if you can even just have that conversation, one of the greatest things that you can do to reverse global warming is actually to just talk about it, to make it a regular part of conversation, to not be afraid of the conversation at holidays, to meet people where they are. There are tons of faith-based people, maybe the opposite political party as you, that understand this. It's just really scary to think about what needs to be done and how you can participate. So what we try to meet people with is solutions. Like, there are tons of solutions out there, even in the book called Drawdown, where we can all start to understand, like, it doesn't have to be about giving things up. It can just be about making really good decisions. So that's probably it's like Interface is the microcosm of the world, right? This is what I'm talking to you about is probably not surprising, even just in your personal life. So it's not that different at Interface, really just educating people. What is carbon? Carbon is not the enemy. Carbon is a building block of life. We've just taken too much of it from where it belongs, which is deep within the earth, and burned it through fossil fuels. And now there's too much of it in the air. So we need to just stop putting so much up. I say just stop putting so much up, but we're also going to need to take what's up down. And that's where the innovation comes in. And we can lock that into buildings and products that we're using anyway in our personal or work lives. And that is, I think, where the really exciting part of the evolution is going to come from is that carbon storage into stuff that we're making and buying anyway.
You started your conversation saying that, early on, the CEO of Interface didn't really feel he had a responsibility, and that, he had this epiphany. What would you say? There are a lot of leaders, unfortunately, that don't view carbon emission reduction as a business priority, right? They may not stand up and say it, but what would you say to leaders? I think you kind of alluded to it. You have to meet them where they are in the conversation or in their journey. But what would you say to these leaders?
I would say, don't let it bite you in the butt. Because it's here. I mean, we look all around us, and even those of us in Pennsylvania, where we might not be getting the wildfires, but we're getting the floods. We're getting the Lyme disease. As we have longer, warmer seasons, insects have more of an opportunity to breed, which means there's more of them, which means there's more possibility of infection of people. To kind of come back to what you and I can kind of both center on, which is health. We can create healthy buildings and occupant spaces as an example for when people come to work, that those spaces promote health. But how are those workers arriving to work? You know, that's where public health comes in. And that's where we all, no matter where we sit, have a responsibility of not just lowering operating carbon emissions, which can save you money, but it also increases public health. You know, take healthcare as an example. 71% of healthcare carbon emissions are in the supply chain. So there's a lot of, you know, zero carbon, and not just healthcare, but most net zero commitments are around operational carbon. But we have to wrap our heads around and work with suppliers, ourselves included, around lowering the carbon emissions of the supply chain, because we have to do that together. You know, we have to start rewarding supplier leadership. We have to start moving and helping suppliers, you know, understand that their impact is our impact. We're all one big thing. Everything's interconnected. So I think that really understanding that and not being afraid of setting really bold goals and watching, you know, your employees really rise to the occasion, allow them to be innovators, understand like what leadership looks like. And I would say just, you know, don't be afraid to be bold, because whether you're looking at it as climate risk or climate opportunity or cost savings, there's a lot that we're seeing our customers do, like look at price next to carbon impact. You know, look at those two things together, because it's already here. It's just whether you choose to see it or not.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. So, you know, as we conclude our conversation, what advice do you have for leaders who are seeking pathways to what, you know, Ray Anderson called the right thing to do and the smart thing to do for business? Just curious on what advice you would give.
Yeah, I would just say if you're not comfortable, ask for help. Ask for connections to other leaders who are already doing this, and help understand how you can set it up in a way that doesn't feel scary. Because there is so much unlocked or so much locked up potential for employees. You know, if over 70% of people are afraid of the impact that climate change is going to have and trust the climate science, imagine what you can unlock within your own organizations in terms of people just waiting for that license to get involved. You know, starting a committee, or, you know, there's always someone's been knocking down the C-suite doors wanting to do something. And if not, just ask the question, you'll find someone. And just like allow people to become active and channel that however it makes sense for your organization. But people are ready. And there are some great opportunities for training within organizations just to understand what is carbon, you know, how can we address it within our own organization, ask those resources. I mean, feel free to reach out to me. And I can connect you with those resources here in the state of Pennsylvania. There's free training available through the climate change. What are they called? It's the climate change professional certification. People would love to do that. It's available for free. And just get it started in your organization. You'll be, I think, thrilled to see the results of participation and interest.
Well, wonderful advice. Lisa, you inspired me. I'm sure anybody that watches this, you are very inspiring. You are an expert in this field. And, you know, really to share information with us, it's just been a pleasure. So thank you for your time today, and great conversation.
Thank you, Mary Beth. It was a joy speaking with you.
Thank you. Thank you to Lisa Conway and to Mary Beth Jenkins for that outstanding discussion. We are, so grateful to have such an inspiring conversation as part of our program today. Next, we're going to spend a little bit of time with some executives who are leading change right here at home, but I did want to open up an opportunity for us to have a little feedback about that keynote conversation. So why don't we all return to menti.com if you still have that open in a window or on your phone, and take a moment to share your reflections on that inspiring keynote. It's worth noting that the certified climate change professional credential that Lisa mentioned is Pennsylvania specific, and you can learn more about that at paclimateacademy.org. And as these takeaways come in and we start to populate this field, I will just share some of my takeaways. Lisa's comments really brought home why scaling the action equal to climate change requires collaboration by all companies and leaders. And I also really appreciated her point that it is very important to meet people and partners where they are, right? And find practical pathways forward. Looking at these comments that are coming in, climate change is everyone's responsibility. Set small goals that fit your stage and your business's journey. Ask for help as needed. And that was one thing that I think really came through in the keynote conversation as well, is that there are so many resources available, and we'll be talking about a lot of those in our discussions today. Corporate goals need to be next to impossible to achieve. That is an important, I think, takeaway, is the willingness to be bold and the practical plain speak. And there's a comment here too that sustainability is more than climate change. Absolutely correct. Climate change is an important piece of the puzzle, but as we see through the leading forward priorities, there are many important sustainability challenges that the business community can really meet. The comment about Lisa's view that if interface thinks a goal doesn't sound impossible, it's not worth doing. Again, back to that bold action. So thank you all. Those were, I think, really helpful takeaways from that really impactful conversation. I'm going to move now into getting us started in our panel discussion, where we can look at some we can speak with some regional leaders. It's my pleasure to moderate a discussion with three of our most committed sustainability leaders: Leroy Ball, President and CEO of Koppers; Ron Keating, President and CEO of Evoqua Water Technologies; and Kurt Lesker IV, President and CEO of the Kurt J. Lesker Company. You can find full bios for these and all of our exceptional presenters at the link that is shown in the chat. Each of these executives has been invited to provide a brief snapshot of what sustainability leadership looks like at their very different companies. And then we look forward to a fascinating discussion and your questions. Throughout this session, we invite you to use the Q&A box to submit your questions for the panelists, and we'll use them for some lively discussion after some introductory remarks from our panelists. So let's get started. First, we're going to hear from Leroy Ball, who is President and Chief Executive Officer of Koppers and serves on the company's board of directors. Under Leroy's leadership as CEO, Koppers is focused on safely delivering customer-focused solutions through the development and application of technologies to enhance and preserve wood. Additionally, he's placed several emphasis on advancing the company's people-focused culture. So I'll invite Leroy to give us some opening remarks.
Thank you, Joylette. And I see looks like I'm having trouble getting on video for some reason, but hopefully you can hear me.
We can, yes.
Yeah, thank you. So, first of all, again, I want to thank you and Sustainable Pittsburgh for inviting me to take part in today's panel discussion. The Koppers name has been around for over 100 years in Pittsburgh, and we were born out of an idea that at the time led to a more sustainable process for coking coal that was used in the traditional steelmaking process. And Heinrich Koppers, who's the founder of our company, he designed coke ovens to capture much of the hazardous byproducts of coking for further processing into other value products that contribute to aluminum production, wood preservation, and other markets such as construction and transportation, rather than taking that waste and spewing it out into the atmosphere as the old beehive oven technology had done. Now, if we fast forward to today, Koppers is actually still in the business of processing coal tar from coke to other usable products, but we're also into much more than that, with global leading positions in wood treatment preservatives and number 1 or 2 positions in treated rail cross ties and utility poles. And all that makes for a neat little story, but there's actually a lot that's sandwiched in between those 2 bookends that's missing. As the company diversified over the years into a wide range of products and then was split into many pieces and sort of a Gordon Gekko Wall Street-like takeover in the late 80s, of which, the current version of our company comes from. And I can tell you, for the middle part of that Koppers story, that 80 to 90 years or so that I just crammed into the last couple sentences, the company probably was not the best environmental steward. And, I'm not going to make excuses. No company really was. It was just a different time. But when I came into my role at Koppers back in 2015, I wanted to create a culture that looked at things differently, that prioritized the health, safety, and well-being of our people, that took ownership of our impact on the planet, and that held our team members accountable for the sustainability of the company, which also involved improving our financial performance so we could survive into the future. And I believe Koppers can't thrive without our value for people, planet, and performance being in balance. Now, I'm also a strong believer every organization must earn their social license to operate. And I'd argue that 10 years ago, we were moving a lot closer to losing that license. But since then, we've made a number of advancements using a principle of continuous improvement, knowing we didn't have the resources or the magic wand to change things overnight. And the first step in our journey of sustainability was adopting the concept of zero harm as the foundation of our culture that we wanted to build in the organization. And when I say zero harm, I'm talking about zero harm to our people, our environment, and the communities in which we operate. And again, because we couldn't change everything in a day, we started with safety, and that led to record levels of proactive safety behaviors, which led to record low levels of incidents. And we recognize we still have a long way to go to get to zero, but our focus remains relentless. In the past few years, we've extended zero harm to the environmental aspects of our business by putting a stronger focus on how we prevent process safety incidents that lead to injuries, spills, and releases. And I can tell you here, we're also far from perfect. In fact, I'd say that we're probably still below average, but we own our shortcomings and we always seek out ways to get better. And in this case, we're working with the American Chemistry Council on a program that will help us raise our game and our performance. And another way that we improve is through our iShare innovation platform that we added about 4 years ago. And that's a platform where ideas can be sourced from anywhere in our organization, and they're scored not just on their financial merits, but also by how they support our zero harm principles. Now, in showing that we value new ideas and that we're focused on remaining in business for the next 100 years, it's led us to enter businesses and develop products that we probably wouldn't have before our shift. In 2018, we bought 2 businesses that involved taking back our industrial treated products at end of life and finding the most responsibly available disposal outlets for them. The buildup of end of life products on customer sites was creating a problem for customers and therefore creating future business risk for us. It was something we felt we needed to take on to protect our business. Unfortunately, for some products, the best solution currently is still landfill disposal, but recognizing that's not a good long-term solution has led us to invest in research to look at creating a true cradle-to-cradle solution for our products, which would improve upon our carbon footprint while also adding a potentially lucrative revenue stream. And finally, in our carbon products business, R&D's put us on a path of development of a carbon-based product that is going through extensive testing as a coating to extend the life of battery anodes used in the electric vehicle markets. And if successful, this could be a game changer for our company and add significant value for our shareholders while also contributing to the improvement of a market that so much of our future climate improvement is hinging upon. And if you're wondering where the idea for that product came from, it's from an extension of work that began by trying to figure out how to improve the yields of our higher value products, knowing that our source of coal tar raw material will likely continue to shrink under the pressure of sustainable steel manufacturing. In summary, I believe that culture and innovation are the keys to a sustainable future, and it's never too late to establish that mindset, no matter where you might be at as a company or how big or small you might be. As the saying goes, while the best time to begin was yesterday, the next best time is now. So I urge those that are thinking about it to not waste any more time and to get started. And so, Joylette, I'm gonna log off and try and log back on so I can get back on the video while you go to Kurt and Ron.
Sounds good. And thank you for those comments and the emphasis that you're placing on innovation. I'm going to move to Kurt. Kurt J. Lesker IV is president and CEO of Kurt J. Lesker Company, which is a leading global provider of high quality vacuum equipment, which enables a vast array of nanotechnologies. So during his 14 years at KJLC, Kurt has held leadership roles within strategic areas such as sales, quality, and industrial engineering. And Kurt, why don't you give us some introductory remarks about your operation?
Thank you, Joellette. Thanks for having me. The mission of our company, enabling technology for a better world, definitely has sustainability built in. A lot of the technologies that we deal with and help to develop for our customers are around renewable energy, low power consumption products. As a company, I want to give you a brief snapshot over the last 5 years. We're definitely early days in our sustainability journey, but let me just give you a brief snapshot. Back in 2016, we were going through strategic planning, and the leadership team decided that we really wanted to support the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Not having a full-time sustainability resource, being a private, smaller company, we said, okay, in order to do that, we really have to focus, and we need to do, as Lisa Conway said, we need to activate our employees to engage and take leadership roles. So what we decided to do was focus in on 3 of the UN SDGs: good health and well-being, number 3, number 12, responsible consumption and production, and number 8, decent work and economic growth. For good health and well-being, we break down wellness into 3 different areas: mental wellness, physical wellness, and financial wellness of our team members. So we started doing 5K run walks. We did nutritional seminars, meditation, yoga. We actually had a lot of fun with it. We started doing education seminars for our managers and supervisors around recognizing mental health issues early on, which I think has become really prevalent during the COVID pandemic. We brought in external financial consultants to help work with our employees on their financial planning. And we also looked at not just the wellness of the company and our employees, we said the community wellness is part of it as well. So we started doing a couple different programs. This was all led by team members. We did Big Brothers, Big Sisters with the Clarendon School District, Make-A-Wish. We did environmental cleanups at local community parks, stuffing backpacks for kids that were going to school and couldn't afford to buy some of their school supplies. And it really drove this great feeling amongst the team. A lot of our employees engaged and helped to move us forward. For responsible consumption and production, we started off what we thought was going to be very simple. Let's figure out how to recycle all of the waste streams that we can. That proved to be way more difficult than I ever anticipated, especially around some hard to recycle items like batteries, light bulbs, printer cartridges, plastic bags. We actually worked with an intern. We brought an intern from Chatham University, massive help to us. So we went to single stream receptacles, had to educate all of our employees, had to really change the culture. I remember in multiple meetings picking out soda cans out of garbage cans saying, this is recyclable. Let's get it into this container. Simple things like that. But we've got to a much better place now. We next moved on to how do we reduce our energy consumption? So we switched everything to LED bulbs, went to waterless fixtures in our restrooms. We eliminated plastic bottles across the company by installing water filtration systems, giving everybody reusable water bottles. And then we moved on to packaging. We said, all right, we ship out about 250,000 packages a year. And we said, we need to eliminate styrofoam peanuts, virgin plastic. We went to a recyclable material. We shrunk down the size of our boxes. We trained our people that were packaging on how they could do it and not have as much waste. And we also said a lot of our products, because we're a manufacturer and distributor, was coming from suppliers. So we made a list of everybody that was sending in styrofoam peanuts, non-sustainable packaging foam. And we went back and said, do not send us this anymore. And it took about 6 months, but it made a big impact. We also renegotiated our energy contracts, which went from fossil fuels to renewable sources. And in doing that, we saved $10,000 a year. So that was a big win for us. And now what we're doing is we're installing solar panels on our new manufacturing expansion. And it's just kind of a step-by-step process that we're trying to initiate with this. Our product development teams are designing eco modes into new products. So low power settings when they're on standby. Simple things like that, but definitely makes an impact when you add it up. And my favorite example, talk about activating employees. This is a really small example, but I love it. We were buying a bunch of tarps to cover up products outside. And our materials manager, I went back there and there were all these signs covering the products. And I said, what is this? And so what she had done is, instead of buying new tarps, she actually contacted billboard companies and said, once you get rid of your billboards, what do you do with them? And so we bought the used billboards, set them out. They worked just as good as new tarps. Simple thing like that, but made a big impact. And last, decent work and economic growth. So we started apprenticeship programs to help develop our internal team members. We joined the United Way's Disability Consortium to try and provide a better work environment for individuals with disabilities that were on the team, to help educate our team members on how to work with them better. We implemented a supplier code of conduct to try and drive certain labor standards, because we have suppliers from all over the world. This has really been a big one. It's not as far along as I would like it to be, but we've definitely started in more of the conversations with our suppliers, been talking about not just price delivery, but really talking about their labor standards, their labor practices, how they're working with their employees, wages, things like that. And I'll wrap it up with this as we look at competitive advantage. Our largest commercial partner, we were talking to them about some sustainability initiatives, and they had just launched this One Planet initiative. This is a $20 billion chemistry-based company in Europe. And what had typically been a conversation around, here's your quarterly sales numbers, started moving to be about sustainability. And we actually did a joint program with them earlier this year called the Eco Dash, where we had 180 employees participate from both companies. We planted 8,000 trees for clean air. And not only that, I mean, great on the sustainability side, but as a competitive advantage, we're always trying to look at how we can build up walls to have our partners transition to maybe other distributors. And so this gained us notoriety at the C-level of that company and has really created a much stronger, stickier bond for us as an organization. So at this point, I feel like we've taken some steps in the right direction, still have a long way to go, but excited about the progress we've made.
Thanks. Thank you so much, Kurt, for that overview. I really appreciated that stepwise conversation about the path that you've taken to improve sustainability and the journey that you're on, both looking internally at your operation and externally. I think a lot of organizations are in that space right now and thinking about these topics broadly, because sustainability is not just one thing, right? It's a lot of things in a really integrated approach. I want to note that Leroy has rejoined us by video. Hello, and welcome back to the panel. And I want to encourage everyone to continue to populate the Q&A so that when we get into questions, we will be able to use some of our audience questions. But before we get to that, we have one more panelist to give us an introduction. Ron Keating has served on the board of directors and as president and chief executive officer for Evoqua Water Technology since December of 2014. Under his leadership, Evoqua has been established as a market-leading water treatment and technologies company, employing more than 4,500 team members focused on a unified purpose of transforming water, enriching life. And I'll turn it over to Ron to give us some opening remarks.
Thanks, Joylette, and thanks for having me today. It's great to be here. I appreciate the intro, and actually you closed with really what the intro is for us. It's the purpose of the company. So when you think about what Evoqua Water Technologies does every day, I mean, our purpose is transforming water, enriching life. So that's what we focus on. We're a leading provider of mission critical water and wastewater treatment solutions for industrial, commercial, residential, and municipal applications. So, you know, spread around the globe, we've got, as you said, about 4,500 employees. We operate out of 160 locations and in 10 countries. So we deal with, you know, somewhere around 38,000 customers with 200,000 installations. And what we're focused on every day is really taking care of the world's most precious resource, which is water. So, you know, by that name in and of itself and what we do and what the purpose of the company is, we're a sustainable company. I mean, that's what we're all about. We're about sustainability. We're about recycle, reuse. We're about making sure that we minimize the impact on the environment of what industrial and municipal operators do every day. So we've had technologies in play for more than 100 years. We're a roll-up of a lot of acquisitions that became a part of a large conglomerate, was carved out as Evoqua Water Technologies in 2014. We were able to go public in 2017 as a public water treatment company. And we have assets in the field that treat more than 100 billion gallons of water every single day. So, our team gets up every day thinking about sustainability, thinking about the environment, and thinking about the impact of what we have and what we do. So it's very exciting for us, and we're investing in it. I think one of the other speakers talked about innovation being very key to sustainability, and we believe that is truly the case. In fact, we just opened a sustainability and innovation hub in Lawrenceville, so we were able to cut the ribbon on that a few weeks back. We're very excited about it, but it's where we're going to have team members, focusing on interfacing with customers, interfacing with increasing challenges in what we deal with emerging contaminants, problems in the environment as a whole, and how we can address those and do it more efficiently and more effective. We think about sustainability really in two ways. We think about our footprint, which is what most companies think about, which is the impact that you have. And we focus on solving those issues with our footprint and making sure that we are more sustainable. We're rolling out our sustainability objectives here in a few days, but just as a preview, we're going to focus on recycling more water and reusing more water than we withdraw by 2035, and becoming net zero on greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. So we're investing in this. We've created a path to do it, and we know what the opportunity is. But even greater than our footprint is the handprint that we have. It's what we enable our customers to do every day in the amount of water that they are able to recycle, reuse, and minimizing their liquid discharge. If you think about, the industry as a whole, you'd be hard pressed to find any single industry that is not reliant on water, on ultra pure water or water for their application, whether it's to enable their process or actually create the product that they create. And what Evoqua focuses on is making sure that you are maximizing the operations of that precious resource of water and engaging it. Our team members, again, they wake up and think about this every day. Sustainability is one of the 4 values of the company, and it is where we focus and what we do. So if you think about our handprint as a whole, it is making sure that we enable those 38,000 customers around the globe with 200,000 installations to minimize their liquid discharge and minimize what they use in their operation, which ultimately is what we're all trying to accomplish in a more sustainable environment. So with that, I'll hand it back to you, and thanks for having me again.
Well, thank you. And thank you to all of our panelists for joining me this morning. And yes, Ron, I was pleased to be able to witness the grand opening of the new Sustainability and Innovation Hub. And it's a really, really great and I think important facility here. Thanks to all our panelists for being here. I want to dig into some questions and have a good conversation with the 3 of you. I will open with this one. So you're all CEOs at companies that represent different sizes of companies, different sectors. Can you tell us a bit about how you approach the challenge of integrating sustainability into your company's strategy? What were some successful strategies for building that buy-in across the organization? We've touched on this a little bit, but sustainability at a company really does need to be across all of the departments, across all of the operations. So how does that work, and what are some successful strategies that you've used?
Juliet, maybe I can begin. I think actually, it came out in the keynote speech pretty nicely. I think it does start at the top of the organization. I think that the leadership needs to set a tone on what the expectations are in the organization around this, and pull that in as part of the vision and the strategy of the organization. So, at Koppers, we have established a sustainability committee of the board. We used to have a safety, health, and environmental committee that, again, we've morphed into a sustainability committee. So at the highest level of our company, there's oversight, direct oversight of a committee of the board on our sustainability initiatives and what we're doing to not just keep up, but try and stay ahead of where things are going. Also created a position, our first chief sustainability officer back in January of 2020. Leslie Hyde was put into that role. So we now have somebody in the C-suite with sustainability in the title, right? And that means something. Words mean something in the organization. And so, that's a strong signal to our employee base that, we can't just expect to operate in the same old ways moving forward, and that we have to challenge ourselves to be better. And we now have leadership in that area. We're not a deep organization. So Leslie does not have, a staff, a large staff, and in fact, she draws upon the resources across the organization. But the thing I think we found is there is a lot of energy in probably most organizations. People want to do these things. They want to work for a company that is focused on doing things the right way. And we've had many people volunteer to step up to be part of what we call our FAST teams, to create craft goals, metrics, and then track all of that to hold ourselves accountable to our progress.
Yeah, I would jump in with Leroy and kind of echo it. It does start at the top. And, one of the things that we did is we rolled out sustainability as one of the values of the company. Again, as I mentioned earlier, it is in the foundation, it's in the purpose of what we do. But, we set a governance structure in place, and our chief growth officer also has sustainability as his target. So he's a chief growth and sustainability officer that is delivering every day on this with his team and across the team. We've invested in, having dedicated resources and bringing in, team members that look at this every day and think about it. Our nominations and governance committee on the board actually took ESG as an overview that they have oversight on. We make sure that we, report out to them. We've set very strong targets, and we've created a path to deliver against those targets. So I think that, what our team members are excited about is coming to a company that has this type of purpose and focuses on this every day. So it is something that I would recommend to other companies, other CEOs that want to get out and do this. Start at the top, make sure you drive it down through the organization, set a governance structure, but also just start to measure it. As Leroy said, yesterday was the best time to start, but if you didn't, today is better. And so get started. And I think that's, really a key to creating a successful strategy around it.
Sure, I'll add in there. I do think it starts at the top. And as I mentioned before, we implemented it as part of our strategic planning. I also put it as a performance goal for each one of my direct reports. So it's actually in their measured goals. They then wanted to get educated and buy into it and talk to their teams about it. But not only just driving it from the top, but as employees, I think Ron and Leroy mentioned this, as employees start to see that commitment and they start to see that there's opportunities that they bring ideas forward, they can be implemented, it really motivates and energizes people to do more. So I think we have a sustainability committee, both in the US and in Europe. It is one of our corporate values. And those committees are driven not by top management or anything like that. They're just driven by employees. And we try and be as supportive as we can to the ideas that come out of those committees to get them implemented. And I do think that makes a big difference and creates a really good snowball effect.
That's great. Thank you to all of you. I'm hearing pretty good consensus on leadership from the top, but also a lot of empowerment throughout the organization, and a really fundamental buy-in that this is everybody's role, which I think is important. I think we're transitioning from the days when you would have one person that did sustainability off in their office on the side, and really empowering that throughout and across the organization seems really important. So thanks for that. I am going to switch gears a little bit because of kind of the moment in which we find ourselves with this important conversation this morning. So we know that the federal policy landscape and the global context with COP26 concluding this week, all these things are moving and shifting relatively quickly. And I'm wondering if you can comment on how that's shaping your thinking on corporate climate action. And that's part of the sustainability puzzle, but a particularly topical part. And maybe I'll kick it actually to Ron first. because I'm curious to hear more about how Evoqua is really extending the reduction of carbon emissions into its business model, and what advice you might have for leaders considering how to do the same. And we can all kind of tag off of that response.
Sure, thank you. So look, we are very focused on reducing carbon emissions. That's one of the things that we've committed on our greenhouse gas reduction. So we're looking inside of our own facilities and our own product lines against that. And I mean, we're going as deep as product line portfolio reviews, just to say, you know, what's a heavy contributor, what's not, how can we offset that? We look at our plants, we look at what we do inside of our own operations, and then, you know, all the way down to looking at vehicles on the road, and what do we do around service vehicles? How do we make sure that we have, you know, more green focus on what we're doing, where the delivery is, and how we service our customers every day. We go to our product lines, and we've been driving real innovation in our product lines around digital connectivity. So instead of actually having to drive and go to a customer site to you know, troubleshoot what they're doing or evaluate their system, we connect to it digitally. So we can sit in our offices, we can measure quality and quantity across what's going, you know, across a customer's application without having to send service techs out, without actually having to have someone travel the site. So it's really all the way from the foundation of how do we innovate, what do we develop as products, what do we deploy into the marketplace that are enabling our customers, you know, to, number one, themselves be more sustainable, cut their carbon emissions, and focus on, you know, recycle and reuse of water, but productivity in their operations, to making sure that we are digitally connected and we can see what's happening there without having to actually physically go there and do things. So it's, you know, all the way from our reach on a handprint back through, you know, our footprint, what our operations are doing and how we deliver every day. And even like Kurt talked about, I mean, it's very simple things. I mean, it's all the way down to, you know, are you recycling? Are you, you know, reusing things? Do you have, you know, single use products in house that, you know, your team is using? Have you changed your light bulbs? And what are you doing inside of your own operations, I think is really key. But it goes from there all the way to what do you provide to the marketplace, and how do you make sure that it has the most minimal impact it can.
Minimal impact and improving those efficiencies, right? Important for
Always, absolutely.
for that multiple bottom line. Kurt, it looks like you were going to have a comment there too.
Yeah, I would say the reason what's driving our actions is not so much regulatory changes, or as a private company, we don't have to deal with outside investors. So there is definitely a movement towards ESG investing. But that's not what's driving. What's driving us is we really feel like this is the right thing to do. And our employee base, our customer base, they want this. They're excited about it. And the initial response, I look at a lot of things like little experiments where you make a change and then you see what the reaction is to that change. And the response from employees, from customers, from those commercial partners like the one I discussed, have been very positive. And I also think it makes great business sense. If you can reduce the amount of waste you're generating, if you can reduce the amount of time it takes and materials it takes, you're also saving costs, which really helps the bottom line of the organization. I'm finding with new employees that we're recruiting, this is kind of a must. I mean, people have more choice than ever about where they work. And when they're evaluating where they're going to work, they want to work for a company that aligns with their values, that aligns with the mission of what they're trying to do in their life. And I feel that what we're doing at the Lesker company very much does that for a lot of the team members that we're bringing on board. So it's something that I think if you're doing it only as a reason because you have to, you're not going to be as excited about it, and people are going to feel that.
And that kind of goes back to something that Lisa Conway said earlier, that, you know, if what you're saying is, well, we're not breaking any laws, that might not be as ambitious as you want to be with that. Leroy, I don't know if you wanted to add on to that. This
Yeah,
part of the conversation.
I'll try and be brief. I mean, it's funny how the market will push you, where things are going, right? So, again, 7 years ago, we were in some tough times. Profitability, 116 million on a $1.6 billion in sales, and it was the worst year that we had. And our strategy coming out of it was a whole restructuring and realignment of our business that actually, in the process, enabled us to take our operating facilities and the carbon material side of our business from 11 globally down to 3. And so in doing that, we were able to tighten up our operations, obviously reduce our carbon footprint significantly, reduce our energy consumption significantly, improve our safety and environmental performance because of all of the reduction of materials and trucks we had on the road going back and forth between facilities. It wasn't our primary intention, but we needed to make those actions to survive. And the byproduct of that was actually an organization that had a much lower carbon footprint. And today, actually, with the addition of a few other businesses since then, our greenhouse gas emissions are down 37% over that time, despite the fact that we're still the same size. We're a different configuration, but we're a much safer company, more environmentally sound. And now we're at a point where we can really think strategically about how we move forward. So one of the next hires that we have coming up for us is a climate specialist to help us understand and look for opportunities in areas where we can, again, try to make sure we're staying ahead of the curve.
Great, thank you. And I love that example from Koppers and all of the examples really illustrating that, sustainable approach to this just is good business when it comes down to it. I'm going to move to a question from the Q&A and invite, again, any attendees who want to populate that Q&A with questions to do so. The question that we have is, what are the wicked problems that are impeding decent work for all? And so I think that's a wide open question. We've maybe already talked about some of the wicked problems, but if any of you want to touch on your experience with such problems, now would be the time. I don't know who wants to take that one first or who has thoughts.
I can touch on one that we're facing, and it happens to do. So we're a manufacturing company, and we have well-paying jobs for people in machinist roles, welding roles, design roles, and we're not finding that the education system is encouraging people to go into those fields. So I know there's this big push for $15 minimum wage, where you can make significantly more than that in some of these skilled trades, but people aren't going into those skilled trades. And I think that's something that certainly is much bigger. That's one of the reasons why we've developed our apprenticeship programs to try and do the training in-house, that we tell people, look, if you want to work hard, you have good work ethic, you want to learn, we'll train you, come on board. And we actually have programs in-house to do that. But it's definitely created an issue where manufacturing, there's a resurgence of manufacturing in the US, but you don't necessarily have the education systems to allow for individuals to be trained effectively to go into those fields right now.
Yeah, I think Kurt's, hit on some pretty good points there, and we see the same thing. I mean, ultimately, as we look and we try to find team members to come in, and the opportunities for team members to engage and be more, focused on ultimately, sustainability and what we do every day with water solutions and water challenges that customers deal with. There is a lot of, education. There's a lot of information that's missing. There's a lot of, just getting people focused on the right things and making sure that we can find, number one, skilled tradesmen, but also, skilled service techs, people that are capable of going out and delivering every day. And I think, the more investment that can come in down the chain in even, trade schools, opportunities, educational factors, I think there are tremendous opportunities for us to be much better as we focus on even some of the challenge communities with investment there to be able to deliver, the team members we're looking for.
Mhm. So I appreciate this conversation and talking about the pipeline conversation as a wicked problem. And there's also a question in the chat that I think ties into this a bit, which is if you can talk a little bit about what you are doing at your companies to advance gender and ethnic diversity in leadership positions. And I actually want to kick this one potentially to Leroy, because I know that advancing DE&I has been important to Koppers and to you personally over the years. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure, Joy. Yeah, and look, we're very focused on improving the demographics of our leadership group. If you look across the organization, again, we're 40 plus facilities around the world, anywhere from 10 on the low end of things at a location up to 120. So there's no single huge area. We're spread out all over the place. And I would say that, when you look at certainly the leadership of the organization, it skews heavily white male. Can't hide from it, can't run from it. We're not going to do that. We're focused on what we can do to try and bring in a pipeline of diverse talent that, and then provide opportunities to grow in the organization. And at the same time, we're really being intentional about how we go about filling positions at leadership levels. So, our board has won awards for, diversity, and we've been very intentional about going about and filling roles that have enabled that to happen. At the leadership level, when I came into my role in 2015, my leadership team that I more or less inherited was me and 5 other white males between the age of probably 53 and 60. And so that was 2015. And today, as we sit, I have a leadership team of 9 that includes 4 females, that includes 2 people of color, and I have 2 positions that we're looking to fill at that level right now. That I'm intentionally going about looking to recruit diverse candidates to come into those roles. So again, it starts at the top, board, my leadership level, and implementing processes in the organization that enable our individuals in the organization to be successful in bringing that talent on and then continuing to develop them. So we're involved in the Tally program here locally. We're a member of Pittsburgh, have a member of my leadership on that board. I was involved in the Urban League for a number of years on the board there. For me, it's about trying to get my leadership group to get involved in the conversation so that they understand the issues that are out there, raising their own awareness, which helps them then speak about it and drive it down into the organization.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I'll add on our side as well. I mean, we're a public company, obviously, and I have the same challenge that Leroy inherited. As you look across the leadership team, it is skewed very heavily white male. I mean, we started with the processes as our board. We've started diversifying board members as board members retire, and we're able to bring other board members on. We also are starting with processes inside the company around hiring, making sure that we have a diverse slate of candidates. We've got a diverse panel that's actually doing the interviews and starting to recruit. We're trying to partner with HBCs on bringing in talent in our leadership development programs. And we're starting to get gain some momentum around that. And I think, again, if you didn't start yesterday, you might as well start today. Fortunately, we've started yesterday, but it takes a little bit of time to make that progress. So you've got to have a goal that you're set to do that, and then you've got to put the right processes and practices in place that ultimately, will generate the results.
I could add something here, Joylette. This is a lesson I learned as I was having conversations about this. I go back to sustainability too. I think doing it for the right reasons. Why do we want a diverse leadership team? Well, we want that because it's going to result in better solutions, better ideas. Our leadership team is 40% female, but it's not very diverse from a race standpoint. And for a long time, I was saying, well, I want the best possible candidates. I don't care what color they are, what gender they are. And then it was actually during a CEOs for Sustainability conversation that we were having. And somebody said, well, what do your networks look like? The people that you're asking for talent, what do they look like? Are they white males or are they diverse? And a light bulb went off. And it really hit me that absolutely. I mean, when I'm asking people for a role, for an executive role, the people I'm asking, a lot of them are white males. And there's a great organization, the Advanced Leadership Institute. Evan Fraser runs it. And it's just, I've had a lot of conversations with Evan. I think that what he's doing there is amazing, trying to bring up the talent of African Americans in the Pittsburgh community, and he's going to spread that out throughout the country, hopefully. But we as a company, and I'm saying we, myself, I need a more diverse network to help bring in more executive talent that's diverse. So I mean, working on it, not where I need to be yet, but definitely a learning experience for me that I want to share.
There's just one thing I can tack on.
Yeah, sure.
I often talk about the fact that, in many cases, the reason, diversity doesn't happen is it's hard. And the reason it's hard, right, is because it creates sometimes difficult conversations. You have people who are throwing different things on the table. In many cases where a leader and or a team sort of wants to act quickly and move in a direction, right? They want quick consensus. Hey, don't throw a wrench into this. So we actually have to deepen the conversation and challenge ourselves as to whether we're really thinking all this through all these different perspectives. So it's easier to add people to the team that think like you. And are going to agree with you, and but it doesn't advance the goals of the organization, I think, in the long term. And so that's why it's needed, and that's why we're continuing to do the efforts that we are to try and make sure that we can create a better Koppers.
The one thing that I'm really appreciating, Leroy, about your comment, and Kurt about your comments as well, the comments from all of you that I'm hearing is, I think, really beneficial in the straightforward way with which you are expressing the challenges that exist, and the position that your organization is in its sustainability journey, and in talking through this and really not shying away from those wicked problems, from those hard problems, from the things that need to be done to accomplish your ultimate goals and get to the better solutions. I really do appreciate that. And I want to move to a question that has come up in the chat as well, that kind of is a nice segue from that conversation, because these are big conversations that do take a lot of, I think, courage and broad interest in the company. What do you feel sparks an organization to initiate a sustainability agenda? So a lot of organizations talk about it, but what, in your experience, is the thing that triggers a company to start a real set of initiatives and programs to make a difference?
From our standpoint, I would say it was setting targets, communicating, and being willing to invest in it. I mean, once you actually start putting investment behind what you're saying we want to do, the employees see that you're real. They see that it actually is something that is highly valued. It's what we want to do. It's what we want to go after. And they actually understand that you're not just giving it words, you're actually giving it actions as well. And I think that's key. Actually, this year, for the first time, we're rolling out inside of our annual incentive plan across the entire leadership of the company. And this is, probably 20% of our total employment base, where sustainability is going to be a part of their annual incentive plan, around making sure that, one, safety's there, but number two, we are actually recycling and reusing a percentage of water compared to what we draw. So making sure that we're investing in it, they see capital behind it, but ultimately they see, full support from us every single day in the budgets that we set and where we want to spend money, and make sure that we are driving it, because it is important.
Yeah, I agree with where's the capital flowing, and people definitely take notice of that. I think for us, the initial spark came from that strategic planning discussion with our leadership team and getting the whole leadership team bought into it and behind it. But ultimately, what led to empowerment of the team members and the buy-in from the team members, I think it was just they consistently saw that this was going to be a part of the way we do business moving forward. Everybody, there's so many flavors of the month. They hear a new initiative. Oh, somebody must have read a book and now they want to implement it. But if over months and years, people see that, no, we are committed to this, they see that capital is being infused into this area, then they start to buy in. And you need those initial front movers, those pioneers, those people they're passionate about it to begin with. But over time, at least, I feel like we've really brought on the masses, and even the people that were reluctant to jump on board are either self-selecting out of the organization or they're jumping on board.
Great. Yeah. And then I think that what also another thread that's come up in this conversation repeatedly is those pressures from internal and external stakeholders that grow over time. And I appreciate the comments about making sure that you're investing in those strategies. And that's a strong signal, I think, to the folks that you're involved with. Okay, so I think we have maybe time for one more question here. I'm going to maybe pull another one from the chat before we close out. And this one's I'm not sure who's going to take this one first. It's about what barriers you face in committing to significant carbon reduction targets, science-based targets, or other significant goals that you might be setting. I know this is always a journey for every company, and grappling with this is important and a process. So I'm interested to hear what your insights are.
So maybe I'll start. I mean, look, the nature of our business is, heavy manufacturing, chemical, right? So, we have a carbon footprint that is unavoidable, but it doesn't mean that we can't find ways to make it better, right, and to lessen that impact. And some of it could happen just by, way of natural consolidation, which is what we've done over the past, again, 7 years to reduce it dramatically. And that's the low hanging fruit, right? That's what's gotten us to today. That's what stabilized the company and actually set it on a path for future success. So now really comes, the innovation to look for opportunities on where we can invest to continue to push that envelope in a more positive direction. So again, that gets back to the platform that we have in place, that gets back to the culture that we've established, it gets back to accountability to the board of directors and the sustainability committee, to set targets and then put action plans in place to reach them. We're right now in the target setting process, right? So the last 7 years for us was all about survivability. It was around making the changes that would enable us to actually have a company to be able to have these conversations. And so we're now here, and now it's about making the investments, in people and capital to be able to set what we think are achievable goals and then put the plans in place to get there. And so we're just now getting to that phase.
Yeah, I'll actually echo one of Leroy's comments there. And it was an interesting comment. Look, sustainability is also about companies being here long-term, being able to support your customer base and do what you commit to do. So being a sustainable company means you're going to be around. I would say, big barriers early on were, companies just being able to justify the investment because of the business we're in. In a lot of cases, it is, you have a carbon footprint. So how do you, generate the returns of investing to lower that? Because you're not going to hit it in an IRR. You're not going to hit it in an ROIC calculation that's going to be overly tangible. But I would say that, I am very appreciative, being a public company, of the ESG focus that investors have taken. As a result, we are absolutely able to justify the investment we're making, we're absolutely able to show a return for the investment we're making and shareholder value growth. And I think that long-term is such a favorable trend. It's fantastic whether you're a private or public company, because people want to do business with companies that are sustainable. And so now, looking at the different scopes, scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, around what your impact is going to drive this initiative across companies of all sizes, whether public or private. So I think the overall investor mindset around where they see value in sustainability is really benefiting industry as a whole.
Great. And in the interest of staying on time, I want to stop our conversation there, but really appreciated those answers. So what I'm hearing from you all today really is about innovation as both the driver and kind of the answer around some of these sustainability challenges, recognizing this is a long-term process. But also recognizing that it's really important to stay on that path and keep investing and keep pushing for that journey to happen. The journey doesn't happen if you stop walking, right? And really establish and support that culture of sustainability across the organization. And I also really wanted to not forget to tag onto that comment about measurement and ESG and really tracking your progress as a way to make sure that you stay on that path. So thank you all. This was a really, I think, helpful and wide-ranging discussion. I want to thank you all for your exceptional leadership. And I'm now going to turn it back over to the CEOs for Sustainability co-chairs, Charles and Ray.
Okay, we're back. Joylette, thank you for leading that really valuable and insightful discussion. It was a really good discussion. And also, thanks, Leroy, Ron, and Kurt, for your company's tremendous leadership in sustainability. I think you really proved the point today that you guys are a great sustainable group of companies. Now, as these CEOs attested, the CEOs for sustainability firms are leading the way with the leading forward priorities, as you see on your screen. And many companies, not just these companies, but many companies are demonstrating measurable achievements in all of these areas. Charles?
Thanks, Ray. One way we're leading is with the Choose Local Pittsburgh campaign hosted by CEOs of Sustainability and Sustainable Pittsburgh. Through this campaign, supported by all CEOs for sustainability companies, we have joined with dozens of partners to encourage consumers throughout the 7-county region to support local businesses. Jeff Broadhurst, Eden Park Hospitality Group's president and CEO, was an early champion of this campaign. Other CEOs for sustainability companies that have partnered as lead sponsors include Evoqua Water Technologies, Giant Eagle, Pitt, Ohio, and Upmc Health Plan. When it comes to advancing equity, Giant Eagle has made headlines last year with its standing up against racism commitments. 1 year later, the family-owned chain has made great progress. For its goal to reach or surpass 14% African-American representation at leadership levels by 2025, Giant Eagle continues to update its hiring processes. It has launched a mentorship program, and to increase its pipeline for new talent, it is strengthening partnerships with regional urban league chapters and historically Black colleges and universities. Giant Eagle has achieved its goal of placing an African-American leader on its board of directors. It has achieved its goal of helping to address food access challenges by launching community pickup points at 3 Pittsburgh neighborhoods, giving community members the option to purchase groceries that are dropped off at convenient community pickup locations, and 6 more are planned. Giant Eagle has also achieved its goal of doubling the number of Black-owned businesses it works with in 2021, and it's on track to do so for the next 4 years. It is also worth noting that Giant Eagle has recently committed to achieve net zero carbon emissions by 2040 with a 50% reduction by 2030. The company will invest $100 million in infrastructure and improvements and innovations, and part of its commitment is to move its entire trucking fleet to alternative energy. DMI companies. DMI companies under Ray's leadership is an example of a company reducing carbon emissions through its operations. According to Energy Star portfolio manager data, DMI companies has reduced carbon emissions from its manufacturing processes by 16.8% per year since its baseline year of 2013. Based on year-to-date performance, DMI is on track to divert 2,800 tons of waste from landfills, an amount projected to offset emissions from its manufacturing processes more than 500% in 2021. The Efficiency Network. The Efficiency Network's pending contract with the City of Pittsburgh is an example of a company reducing carbon emissions through its business model. This $16 million project will replace the city's 35,000 streetlights with LEDs that are 40 to 50% more energy efficient, thereby reducing the city's streetlight costs by $1 million per year. $12 million of the project is funded by federal stimulus funds to install another 15,000 high-energy streetlights where there are few or none. City officials said a notable factor in the Efficiency Network selection was its plan to provide local residents with job training opportunities related to the project. Ray?
Thanks, Charles. Now, we're pleased to have some sustainability experts among the CEOs for Sustainability Leadership Group here to lead us in a great discussion about the how-to of leading forward. With us to lead some interactive engagement with you, help us exchange information, and respond to your questions are Jenna Lake of 3R Sustainability, David Landis of Epic Metals, and AJ Swartz of Environmental Planning and Design. At 3R Sustainability, Jenna helps clients realize the value of sustainability in their organizations by defining their material ESG impacts, their risks and opportunities, and helps them pick the right goals, metrics, and action plans to add sustainability into their culture, operations, and daily decision-making. Under David's leadership, Epic Metals has focused on sustainability. Many of Epic Metals' manufacturing facilities now have on-site solar or wind turbines to generate electricity and charging stations for electric or plug-in hybrid vehicles. These systems have offset hundreds of metric tons of carbon emissions. Environmental Planning and Design is a landscape architecture and community planning firm. As studio director, AJ lends expertise in preparing comprehensive plans, zoning and land development ordinances, and impact studies. They also do large-scale master plans, land development plans, and public space designs. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to you, Jana.
Thank you very much. This has been a fantastic morning. Thanks, Ray and Charles, and to all of Sustainable Pittsburgh and the CEOs who've participated today and CEOs for Sustainability. This has been so inspiring to see all of the amazing things that are happening across Pittsburgh and the impact that we can all have with our customers and our supply chain as well, including the employees within our own organization. So it's been great to be able to listen. I've been frantically taking notes today, as I'm sure many of you have. So many great ideas. And I'm thrilled to be here with David and AJ as they've also been, on their own journeys and experiencing a lot of success in what they do too. What we'd like to do first is we want to hear from each of you. So we're going to do another Menti poll. Please tell us what best describes your organization's accomplishments on the leading forward goals. How do you feel you're making some progress right now? Are you in the beginning, early stages? Are you kind of trying to assess what the options are? You feel like you're really starting to get in there and achieve your goals? How do you feel today? Okay, that's fantastic. That's great. A lot of people are making some progress. So that's fantastic. And gosh, 11% actually feeling like they're achieving their goals. 18% not sure. I can understand, right? You feel like you might be trying to figure out where you're headed next and wanting to make a difference. and 13% are exploring their options. So it seems like, everyone on the phone today is at least at the point of wanting to be able to learn more. And you certainly have had a chance to do that today. And look, we're even making more and more progress as more people jump in. David and AJ, I know you guys have been doing a lot of great things in your areas. Would you ever say that you're actually done, or is it all just a part of the journey? And I think we're all trying to make progress and achieve our goals. How do you each feel?
I would say that it's a long way to go. No matter when we started, 10, 11 years ago, there is a great deal of work left to be done. I think it hopefully will be a progress that we continue to make, across, as innovations in technology continue. We want to stay with learning the newest and latest technologies that are available.
That's a great point. Go ahead, Jay. Go ahead, AJ.
And Jana, I guess to kind of build on what David was beginning to kind of lay out, business is always evolving, right? In terms of what your services are, what your products are, et cetera. And the way we internally do things is constantly evolving. So I don't think you're ever at a static point. While it's nice to kind of push the chair back and say we've succeeded, check that box off, the truth is you flip the page and there's a whole series of additional check boxes you now need to start working on. So it's a mission that is kind of in perpetuity.
Well, that's for sure. And as you point out, even when you actually achieve one goal, it really just kind of positions you from a continuous improvement standpoint to think about what more can we do in that area and others, and really focusing on those things that are the most important to your business and how it ties to your customers' needs and your employees and other stakeholders. Something I'd love to hear a little bit more from the whole group on is if we can go to our next Menti poll, what resources, tools, and tactics have been helpful to your company in making progress? David, maybe you could share with us while people are putting in some information here, what are some of the tools and tactics that you've used?
Well, certainly the internet is just a wonderful tool to explore what's happening in the latest technologies across almost every industry, doing searches. Here in Pennsylvania, one of the areas that we've moved forward with a lot is electric vehicle charging stations. And thanks to the efforts of the Volkswagen settlement for their Dieselgate, they've provided hundreds of millions of dollars available for each state. And in Pennsylvania, they provide money for public charging stations. And we currently have 7 charging stations, of which 3 of them were funded in part by this settlement money that came available from the state of Pennsylvania.
That's fantastic. AJ, I know you've been very active as well in a number of the community projects that you do of making sure that you're tapping into for your companies and the others that you work with, how they can access some financing. So maybe you can tell us a little bit more about that.
And I'll be very honest. Sometimes, again, we're a service industry, so we're serving clients. We don't make product in terms of the same as, say, DMI and some of the other champions that are on the call today. We're mostly intellectual, in terms of content. And sometimes we kind of forget about ourselves. And so while we are constantly kind of challenging and leading our clients in terms of sustainability, sadly, we were in the midst of doing a strategic plan, and we realized we were not necessarily walking the walk as strongly as we should. We could talk about it with people and be provocative and really kind of help push, nurture our clients, but we needed to step up on our own. And so when we went through the strategic planning process, that then led to let's actually write down what we do and what we advocate for and what we believe in. And that was a major step forward because it really brought it into everybody's attention. Kurt had talked about this in the previous segment. When you're bringing other people into the fold, it becomes infectious if they see what the purpose is and the value is. And I think that was the important thing of doing something very simple as a strategic plan for our own organization. And so it finally it was time to take care of ourselves as well as we take care of our clients.
That's an excellent point. Really looking internally and determining what you are doing and how that is helping you to achieve your overall goals. Often doing a baselining first can be a very important tool for people to do, right? What are we doing? What are those areas that are important to our business and to our stakeholders? And then how do we actually start putting some goals to be able to achieve, progress? And then how are we tracking and measuring? You get what you measure, right? And I'm sure you each have seen that as well, that when you start putting some goals in place and you know where you're performing, you can start putting in the actions in place to actually then achieve your goals. I love some of the ideas that have been shared here on our Menti poll. Thank you. Please keep them coming. The benchmarking, love that. Internships and university partnerships are critical, sometimes bringing some great new thinking to an organization. Engaging the smartest people in the world, for sure. Believe in your materiality assessment and prioritize based on it. Boy, that one is so important. Going through that step of materiality and understanding what is important to your business and to your stakeholders will make sure that you're focusing your resources on the right things. There are a lot of things that we can measure, and we don't necessarily need to track and measure and report all of those all of the time, but we have to make sure that we're at least looking at what are our biggest risks and impacts and opportunities, and making sure that we are putting in place the systems to track, manage, and report on those and build continual improvement in place. We've heard today about strategic planning, fantastic point. Really looking at your organization and understanding what is expected of you within your industry, what are your customers looking for, what are your employees expecting of you, and how do you make sure that you are really setting yourself on the right path. ESG ratings can be very helpful as well. We were heard earlier about the focus of investors, and investors starting to take a longer term approach. That can really help a company to be able to get out of the quarterly performance reporting mindset and really get into kind of some longer term thinking, but tracking and reporting on their what's most important to them on a regular basis, at least even internally. So some great ideas here on our resources and tools. We have one more Menti poll, if we could go to that. So now let's talk a little bit about that balanced piece, right? So what are some of the challenges that you're running into, and where could you use some recommendations and help? I want to make sure too that we point out one of the very early tools that was suggested. It kind of scrolled up pretty quickly, but Sustainable Pittsburgh is a fantastic resource for some tools to get you started. Their roadmap resources have been critical to a number of companies being able to do that first step of figuring out where are we right now, and starting to give them at least those areas that they should start looking into for their organization based on the type of industry they're in and the type of work that they do. So I highly suggest you go look for the Sustainable Pittsburgh CEOs for Sustainability resource set. And I believe Gina is going to talk a little bit about that at the end. But what are some of the other challenges, David and AJ, that you've run into as you've been putting, building sustainability really into the core of your business?
I think that one of the challenges is to get people in your organization to make the change. For instance, even for myself, being that I'm in my 60s, I was for many decades, close to 4 decades, other than changing my mode of transportation to walking or riding a bicycle, the choice was you had to burn gasoline. Well, as soon as the technology changed to where you could now drive a zero emission vehicle, well, I wanted to make that change because for 40 years, I didn't have the choice. There really wasn't the choice of technology. now there is a choice. And as soon as the choice became available, I made the change, and we've had 7 of our other employees have also made this change, and we continue to try to educate people to understand that not only are you saving the gasoline, your car doesn't need any oil changes, there's no antifreeze, they're much more economical. It costs somewhere around 30% of the cost of gasoline in the electricity that is used to run a car. So we continue to try to educate our people. And to date, we have displaced the burning of 9,650 gallons of gasoline. And that's the equivalent almost of a tanker that you see filling up the tanks at gasoline stations. Those tanker trucks, they carry around 11,000 gallons. So to date, we've displaced almost the equivalent of 1 full tanker truck of gasoline.
That's fantastic. And, technology and infrastructure are so such critical components to being able to achieve some of our goals that it really, boy, talk about bringing this all back around to innovation. It is taking a lot of very unique partnerships and collaborations across entire value chains to make some of this happen. And sometimes it's a customer setting a very ambitious goal and everybody kind of looking around like, okay, how are we going to get that one done, right? But then as you start reaching out and collaborating with others, you identify that, all right, yes, it might take a system change here to achieve it, but that's what we all need to do, right? We all need to be rolling up our sleeves right now and figuring out what part do I play and how can I help others along our value chain to be able to achieve not only, kind of each of our own goals here, but really the bigger, broader goals that we were talking about even at the beginning around, climate change, carbon reduction, et cetera. So there's some really neat, neat challenges, right? Because every challenge means there's an opportunity to be able to address it. I love some of the ones around, different kinds of carbon emission accounting softwares, ROI templates, as far as some different ways that we can work together to overcome some of these challenges. Frankly, cultural kinds of shifts for some companies can be a real challenge internally, and doing what you can to really be able to drive that internal buy-in and getting people excited about it and really helping people to understand that sustainability isn't something over here that just this small little group of people, if they have sustainability in their title, does. It needs to essentially become a part of a culture of a company and get built into the way that every person within the company operates. So it's about setting those goals and then really translating that into how does that play out within a person's role and how people work across an organization. So opportunities for internal change management, setting some of those big, ESG goals and making sure that they are some that you are really positioned to be able to meet across your company. Making sure that there's initial employee understanding and commitment. That can be a real challenge in the beginning, but it takes a lot of good communication and often that's driven by leadership. But then there are so many people within a company, especially today, that really have a passion around this and can get excited, especially when they've got some drive and vision. AJ, are there any other challenges maybe that you've seen or run into, and how would you suggest, ways of working around those?
Well, on our end, in terms of our organization, the cultural change was and continues to be the biggest challenge. And candidly, on the, like as David talked about, in terms of electrifying a fleet, we converted to use electric cars 7 years ago. We're at 250,000 miles in terms of that travel. That was easy because there was a simple metric to see what that savings was. Trying to have a discussion with hiring practices and why having more diversification in terms of the staff, when it's not as easy a metric to be able to calculate and compute why one direction is different than another direction, that's a harder conversation to have. And not only across the board with the entire staff, but within the leadership group itself. And so you're almost saying, hey, we want to change the award-winning chili recipe. Why do I need to change the recipe? Well, because we need to be able to find a path that will still allow us to be here 20 years from now. And that's a harder thing to put your finger on. And from my perspective, that's the biggest challenge.
But boy, I love that analogy, actually. The award-winning chili recipe, this year it was award-winning, right? And everybody thinks it's the best. But our peers and our customers and everyone, they're all moving forward as well, right? And so it really becomes that opportunity to not only say, what are we doing great right now, but where do we need to be going so that next year we can win it again. So you can't ever kind of get to that point and say, okay, good, we're done. Now it becomes really that, we're assessed daily with our peers,
Yep.
On our costs and our product quality and our ESG commitments and our ratings, organizations as public companies. So it really becomes such a great opportunity to be able to say, let's all look at what we can do to be able to be better and better all the time. And really that innovation, continual improvement just has to become a part of the daily sauce. Super. Well, I believe we're right about at the end of our time here. So Gina, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to you to share more about those resources and tools.
Thanks, Jana, and thanks, AJ and David. That was a great conversation. Thanks to the attendees too for fostering such great comments and sharing your what you found to be useful in terms of resources and getting past your challenges. I'm going to share just a few of those tools that Jana kindly mentioned from Sustainable Pittsburgh. One of our tools you can start using today is the Leading Forward Roadmap. This is a tool that CEOs for Sustainability and Sustainable Pittsburgh have developed to support the leading forward priorities we've been talking about this morning. The roadmap is designed to provide a strategic framework and resources for business action in these three areas that we've been talking about: supporting local communities, reducing carbon emissions, and advancing equity in your workplace. You can access it for free at the URL shown here. As many of you know, Sustainable Pittsburgh's core work is in our recognition programs. You may be aware of the Sustainable Pittsburgh Shop, Restaurant, and Sustainable Pennsylvania programs. Through these programs, a business or a community can access a framework and resources for step-by-step progress, and in doing so, they can earn points toward a bronze, silver, gold, or platinum level of designation. We've been building a new user-friendly platform over the past couple of years to launch updated versions of these programs. And this new platform will go live on December 8th with these enhanced programs. We're most excited to be launching a new edition this fall. The Sustainable Pittsburgh Workplace Program is a framework for that any type of business, whether you're a nonprofit or a university or an institution, or some other type of business that's not a shop or restaurant, can use to set goals, take actions, and receive public recognition for your achievements. And hearkening back to the conversation we just had now about how difficult it can be to facilitate collaboration across your organization, that is something that these programs do really well. Multiple people at your organization can get involved. In fact, we encourage you to have a team of people working across the business to do that. So I hope that you'll check them out. We're kicking off all 4 programs at an informational webinar on December 8th. And Jeanette is going to put the URL for that in the chat. I hope that you'll register today. We're excited to share this all these programs with you. In addition, we've got some friendly competition sprints. These are some short versions of the Sustainable Pittsburgh Challenge that we've done in past years. They're going to be focused on particular areas. The first one launching in the first quarter of next year is going to be on workplace equity. And we'll do another one on carbon emissions reduction later in the year. The points that you earn there will apply toward those other programs. So it'll be a fun way to make progress and engage your team. This is what the platform looks like. The workplace program and sprints are going to comprise a user-friendly framework and resources for progress across all of the environmental, social, and governance factors. And they're also going to allow you to make progress on other things that you're working on. Progress in these programs also supports your organization participation in frameworks like the Vibrant Pittsburgh Vibrant Index, the CDP, the Global Reporting Initiative standards, and so on. So with that, we invite you to To learn more, go to ceosforsustainability.org and learn more about all these tools and resources. Keep an eye out for our 2022 event calendar. And more immediately, please plan to register for our December 8th event. We would love to see you there. With that, I'm going to hand it back to Charles to wrap us up.
All right. Let me get my video going again. Wow, time flies. Thanks, Gina, and thanks to Jonna for leading the previous discussion. And also thanks to all of our presenters, Oxford Development for hosting this afternoon's tour, and our presenting sponsor, UPMC Health Plan. As we conclude this morning's program, we want to once again invite all businesses, regardless of where you are in terms of sustainability progress, to join with CEOs for Sustainability in reaping the benefits of business sustainability. We hope to see you at this afternoon's tour and closing reception starting at 4:30 p.m. And with that, we'll bring things to a close. Thanks once again for being with us.
Thank you and have a great day.